welcome. How you doing? We're doing a teaching session, so I'm not just going to sit and noodle, and we're going to talk about playing slide guitar today. So yeah, we're going to be going over the basics of how to get started with on playing slide guitar. And I've got about 10 tips for you. And these are all sort of beginner level slides. So if you're looking for more advanced stuff, I'm sorry, I'm not going to do that today. I might do it another time if people are interested. But we're just going to go over like the basics of how to play slide guitar. Let's go. So, tip number one, or thing number one to think about. These aren't really tips. These are just things you should know. You got your slide. Sometimes you've got glass ones. I've got a metal one. You've got copper ones. You've got different ones. This one's quite thin, but you get sort of fatter ones too. So this one goes on your little finger, like that. You get other ones that go, they're much bigger and can cover your bigger fingers. But the most important thing to do is don't put it on finger number one, right? Maybe some people do that. I've never seen it. Maybe some people do. I definitely don't do it, and there's a couple of good reasons why you shouldn't, which we'll get to later. So don't put it on finger number one. Sometimes I think people use the second finger, but most common is your little finger or your ring finger, your third finger. Because I've got a little metal one here, I'll be using my little finger. But just remember, don't put it on finger number one. Tip number two. Now there's a big difference. I'm going to zoom in on the guitar now, but just carry on talking. There's a big difference between playing slide and playing normal guitar. When you play normal guitar and you're playing a note, you push down. You put your finger on the string and you push it down so it's trying to touch the wood. When you do slide guitar, you don't push it all the way down. You don't try and put pressure on like a normal thing. You don't do that. You got to find you got to put it on the string enough that you're getting a note, but you're not pushing all the way down as you normally would. Okay, so that's quite hard to get the hang of in the beginning. But if you try and push down like you do normal notes, and you try and slide, it's going to sound something weird. Like, you don't want that. You want this. You want that nice gliding in between notes. That's the whole point of playing slide guitar. And also, if you try and put too much pressure on, you are going to mess up your frets over time, and you'll end up destroying your guitar, or bad things will happen. So don't push all the way down. That is the second most important thing. Another big difference between playing slide guitar and playing normal notes is when you play a normal note. Let's say I want to play fret 2, normally I would put my finger there, just not on top of the fret but next to it, and I push down, and that gives me an A note, or fret 2, and that's lovely. Or fret 3, I go there, so that's fret 4, 5, 6, whatever. But I'm never putting it exactly on top of the metal. I don't put it like that, because that can sound weird and buzzy. I put it there and I get the right note. With slide, it's the opposite. You want to hover it, you want to hover where the contact point of the slide is going to be. You want to hover that exactly over the top of the fret. Let's see if we can sort of see what we're doing here. So it sounds all messy there, so I'm not holding it properly. Now here's a hard bit. We're talking about getting pressure, the right amount of pressure on the string to get a note, but not too much and not too little. So let's think a little bit about what you would normally do when you're teaching. When you're normally playing guitar, you'll use the fingertip. You'll use the tip of your finger, and that's where you'll press down. So when you're beginning with slide, you can do the same thing. So like inside the slide, but you're going to sort of push a little bit with your pinky there. Okay, and that'll cover the note you're going for. So in the beginning, we're just going to work on one string. I'm just doing all this on the G string, and I'm going to try and find with the area where the tip of my pinky would be. That's where I'm going to try and put a little bit of pressure down to get a note. And eventually you'll work up to being able to do like multiple strings, and you'll get used to like putting pressure like or evenly all the way across. But that's hard to do in the beginning, so don't do it in the beginning. Work on putting, so you can see you can sort of press a little bit against the inside of the slide with the tip of your finger and get the pressure that way. That's what you're aiming for. and just work on single notes. In fact, I'll make that the next tip. Don't try and do chords or multiple notes when you're beginning. Just work on one string and get good at playing notes on one string. Now here's the key. This is a really key one, all right? And this is hard, so you've got to practice it. But what you're doing, if you watch my hand carefully, what I'm doing with my fingers that are not with the slide, I'm still using them to rest on the strings, and they sort of they mute the string behind the note I'm playing. And there, well, that was horrible. And that way I can just get the note I'm going for and nothing else. Or if I was playing a couple of notes or 3 notes, I could just get those notes by picking them out and not worry about anything else. Because if you don't use these other fingers to mute behind the thing, you start getting weird overtones. I don't know if you can hear that, but you start getting all the other strings, because you're touching the other strings with the slide, remember? And you start to hear the scrapes and the whirry horribleness. So you use whatever fingers you can behind the slide to hold the strings just dead like that. Which is why we don't put it on finger 1, because if you had it on finger 1, you'd have nothing to mute with. You'd have to do something weird with your thumb. But you don't want to do that. So your hand position is actually going to change quite a lot. So normally when you're playing guitar, you're sort of on your fingertips and you're pinching, and it's all lovely and sort of like that. But when you're playing slide, everything's going to go very flat. So your hands are kind of just held in a sort of ridge, very flat, and you're just sliding it along. It's like a curtain sliding on a rail. Now, if you're still getting some buzzing and overtones, you can also mute with your palm there, down on this part of the guitar, and just lay it sort of gently on the strings and just sort of really dampen everything down. And maybe lift off on the string that you're trying to do. The main thing is with your left hand though, or whichever hand you do the frets with. So there you go. That's probably one of the most key things about slide, is getting good at muting. Now you might want to play around with taking it off so you can get crazy weird noises, which is fine, but you want the option to turn it on and off as you choose. You don't want to be making all this weird sort of scraping sort of overtones and stuff like that by accident. You want to do that as an effect. So yeah, single notes. What we want to do is we want to work out a scale pattern going up a string. I'm just going to do everything on the G string, and I'm going to use for today I'm just going to use the normal blues scale. Sounds like this. Okay, it's called a pentatonic scale or a blues scale. You hear it a lot in slide music, because slide music really comes from blues. And the frets are, or the positions that you want to hit, if you want to sort of follow along, are 0, so open string, then 3rd fret, then 5, then 7, and 10, and then 12, and then backwards, so 12, 10, 7, 5, 3, 0. But you could be playing any scale you want. You could be playing a major, a minor, something you made up yourself. But you're going to just know exactly what positions, what frets you can hit along the thing. And I want you to practice like this. I want you to practice going very slowly in between. So the first one, play open. That's easiest. That's as easy as it's going to get today. And then you're going to play fret 3. So put your fingers down to dampen and get your slide right over the top of the 3rd fret, right in the center there. Oh, that's horrible. Sorry. Try and get that note. Okay. Hard to do. Hard to do cleanly. Just going on and off there. 0 to 3, but then we're going to go 3 to 5 now, because 5 is the next fret in the scale. But what you're going to do is you're going to pluck on fret 3 and then slide into fret 5. So you hear 5 when you finally arrive there, and you want to do this, you want to practice going slowly and have some fun with this. So I don't pluck it twice, I just hit it once and I travel up to the note I want. And let's try that 5 to 7 now. And then 7 to 10, and then 10 to 12. then we're going to go backwards. And like I say, when you're practicing this, I want you to go as slowly as you can and really exaggerate that movement, that glide, that sort of, that's what it's all about. This is the fun stuff now. Now the hardest one is when you're going from 3 back to the open string, back to 0. Because you have to sort of glide down, but at some point you have to gently lift your fingers off without making a horrible clang. Oh. Okay, so let's go over that again. So 0, 3rd fret, 5th fret, 7th, 10th, 12th, and then reverse, and sort of plucking the note and sliding into the next note. Quite as slowly as you can. Practicing being able to pluck it and it having enough energy to travel to the next note and make that cool wailing sliding sound. Oops, sorry. Then once you got good at going slowly up and down your scale, you're going to do the opposite in a sense, and you're going to practice what it's like going quickly between your the points in your scale. So that is. Oh, I played that bit wrong there. Okay, it's this is harder because what you got to do is you got to pluck it and you got to move like a sharp, fast movement, but you've got to land at exactly the point of the note that you're playing. And because you're not doing normal frets, you're at your comfort zone now. You've got to use your ears to know exactly when to stop so you're in tune. Now, there's a little thing that you've seen people do if you watched anyone play a slide, and it's one, it's a very cool effect, but two, it's a useful little technique for helping you find the note. And it's called vibrato, or it's when you do this sort of wobble thing on the string. So let's say I'm going to slide from fret 3 and I want to go to 7. Now when I get to 7, it's unlikely that I'm going to just magically stop at exactly the right place over the top of the fret. So when I get there, I'll wobble either side of the fret a little bit until I find the center, and then I'll resolve it on the center. So one, it's going to sound kind of nice, and two, it's for me and my ears to be able to just get in tune, just a fraction of a second. So let's try it. Fret 3. So just a little sort of shake and wobble until you find the center and the sort of middle of the note that you want. Like I say, this is like one of the really cool things about sliding, is getting that wah sort of, and you can really exaggerate it. Once you start getting comfortable, you can really just sort of go to town and really sort of not do just tiny little fractional wobbles across just either side of the fret. You can really sort of get wide and then sort of narrow it in. I mean, it's probably best not to overdo it, but you can, when you start getting into it, you can have some fun. So anyway, so that's one of the really good ones, is this sort of the vibrato or wobble technique. Like I say, but it's not just to sound crazy and wild, it's actually to give your ears a moment to tune in to find out, okay, where does my slide need to finish in order to be on the note that I want it to be on. It's a bit like, I'm guessing like violin players and cello players and instruments without frets, they have to get very good at doing this, like really, really super quickly. You forget how useful the fret is. Whoever invented that, I can't remember what point in the history of the guitar that came along. But anyway, I digress a little bit. But the one last thing I think you should work on, once you've got all these sort of basic ideas down, and you've got, the scale you want to work on, the most important combination notes, most important two combinations to really sort of focus in on, is going from 0 to 3, or 0 to any other note really in the scale. Because that's the hardest to sort of do without clanging. So if you just put your fingers down, slam it down, and you don't do the muting, you can get this sort of horrible sort of banging on the strings, which again you might want, but you want to be able to be in control. You want to choose when you use it. So I would spend a lot of time, once you get into this, just doing something like this. just playing with the 3rd fret and the open string and just getting good at coming on and off the open string without making banging and crashing. And when you're comfortable with that, maybe go up to the 5 and practice doing 5 and off, or 5-3 off, or something like this you may have heard before. I mean, that's a really sort of, it sounds so easy, but to get it nicely is pretty hard. So yeah, so that's a really sort of, when you've got used to just going up and down the scale, sliding slowly into your notes. Next, practice going up and down the scale, but always coming back off to the open. And really sort of taking a long slide up into each note. So there you go. That is the basics of sliding. I'm going to go over, there was sort of 10 tips, I'm going to super quickly go over them. So tip number 1 is put it on your 4th finger or your 3rd finger, maybe your 2nd finger, but never put it on your 1st finger. That's I've never seen anyone put it on the 1st finger, but I just definitely would not do it. If you've got a little one, you put it on your little finger. If you've got a slightly fatter one, you can put it on one of your fat fingers. Tip number 2 is don't push down like a normal fret. You don't squeeze like you do when you're playing normal guitar notes. You just put it on top of the string. This is hard to sort of see, and you've got to find the right amount of pressure, but you don't push it all the way down. Another key difference is when you're playing a normal fret, you tend to play to the side of where the fret is. So if I want to play fret 2, I play just to the side of it. With slide, you want to hover the contact point of the slide exactly over the center of the fret. Sorry, it's hard to see because I keep using my fingers like that. But to get the correct pitch, that's what you need to do. And the other tip is, like, start with single notes, really important, but use the tip of your finger inside the slide to apply a little bit of pressure to get down on the string, and get good at doing that before you start worrying about getting even pressure across lots of strings. Okay, so just a little squeeze, a little bit of pressure. One of the most key things is getting these fingers, 2 or 3 of them, muting behind where the slide is. So if you don't have them on, you start getting all these overtones. Start with single notes before you go to chords. Learn a scale pattern. Probably the best scale to learn is the blues one. So 0, 3, 5, 7, 10, 12. That's the notes to learn. Whilst you're practicing this in the beginning, practice going slowly from each note. Pluck one note and slide into the next. So 3 to 5. Pluck and slide. And do it quite slowly and really sort of exaggerate. And then do the opposite, do quick movements. And then, very important, practice vibrato. So sort of wobbling it all over the place, but then centering in exactly over the center of the note you want. So lots of good shuffling going on there. And then last thing is to practice going from open strings to a fret, back to open, back to a fret, back to open. And just get good at that, because it's hard to get on and off without clanging. There we go.